My name is Darla DeGrande, and I'm coming to you live here from my beautiful home office in San Diego. I'm so excited to be with you today. It's unfortunate for the topic, but I'm excited to be with you, and I'm excited to introduce you to my guest, Erin Baer. Erin's out of Colorado, and Erin holds a special place in my heart. Erin is the author of this book called From Beaten to Badass, and her story is about being beaten, raped, and abused, and becoming her own hero to make it through it all. And we'll talk a little bit more about the book at the end of this, but I want to tell you how this all came about. We have a friend who owns a bail bonds company, a very, very popular one for over 25 years. He's very successful. And we were sitting around talking, and he was talking about how he's making the most money that he's ever made in all of his career. And I said to him, "Do you attribute it to COVID and the quarantine?" He's like, "Oh, yeah, absolutely." And my husband Jim said, "Can you pinpoint if it's coming from any area?" And I jumped in and said, "From looting or crimes, I would imagine." And he's like, "No, from domestic violence." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." At that very moment, I knew exactly that we were going to do this. I was like, "Oh my gosh, we're going to go live, and I'm going to get Erin. We got to create awareness." And that's what this is about. And so I'm going to ask Erin some questions, and these questions are going to be able to hit to the homes of those that maybe they're not quite sure what to do. And we're going to start from the real beginning. So Erin and I were talking earlier. We've talked a lot over the last several months because of her book journey and all the interviews that she's been doing. And I've been learning a lot about domestic violence and abuse and the journey that it goes. And Erin, let's start, if we could, please. What is domestic violence?
Yes, so there's actually not just the physical abuse, the beatings, the bruises, the black eyes. There's actually financial abuse, which is where they control the money and give you an allowance. There's emotional abuse, where they put you down and say that you're not good enough. You're not, you're just so emotional. You're crazy. There's mental abuse, which is an extension of the emotional abuse. You're crazy. You're making things up. I don't know what you're talking about. And there's the isolation and confusion, where they isolate you from your friends and family. That's abuse. There's the manipulation, where they, do one thing and then they say another, and they go back to the mental abuse. So there's domestic abuse is physical, financial, emotional, mental, sexual, which is the rape and making you do sexual things that you don't feel comfortable with. There's also abuse where they use your children against you. And so there's an array of different types of abuse. So when people think domestic violence, and that's where the language is getting shifted, is to be domestic abuse, because domestic violence, people automatically think, well, I'm not getting hit. I'm not, bruised up, and I'm not getting beaten, but rather I'm just being told I'm crazy, or I don't know what I'm talking about, or things are being made up. And that's the, emotional and mental abuse.
So I have this one friend who is constantly breaking up because he did this and that, and and of course the truth comes out during those times. And then a couple weeks later, they're back together again, and he loves me, and he apologized, and he said he's never going to do it again, and he's getting help. And then the neck out again. And talk for a minute about that and what type of abuse that is, and help those types of people recognize that and where that path leads.
So that's a very typical situation where people find themselves in an abusive situation, and first denial and shame and guilt, fall into place, and they're in denial about the fact that maybe it's an abusive situation. Maybe they're making it up. Maybe it wasn't as bad as they thought. And so they dismiss the abuse the first time, and the perpetrator, the monster, says, "I'm sorry," and gives you flowers or roses. For me, I got red roses and a sorry the next day, and that it was exaggerated on my end, and it would never happen again. So then we enter the honeymoon phase, where everything seems happy and rainbows and go lucky, and oh, I love you, and I can't live my life without you. The best thing I've ever happened. And as soon as you're sucked into that narcissistic world of thinking that everything's going to be okay, that it just happened once, it's not going to happen again, it happens again, and then the shock of it hits you, and you're like, did it really happen? And then the apology happens again. And then you go through this roller coaster of abuse, honeymoon, abuse, honeymoon, abuse, honeymoon. And studies have shown that it takes 7 times for somebody to leave before they actually leave. And leaving is actually the most dangerous time for a victim of abuse, because most of the time, either you're beaten one last time, and you do get away, or you're beaten and you're beaten to death and you don't get away and you've lost your life to the abuse. And so the fear of being beaten and then the fear of possibly being killed in the hands of a monster set in. So people just deal with it. Victims just deal with it. Oh, I can make this work. I can change him. I don't need to leave. It's going to be okay. I'm exaggerating. And that's where the mental and emotional abuse plays a role in the victim, because the monster, who's normally narcissistic and normally mentally ill or an addict of some sort, controls how you think and behave. And so you take on those thought patterns to think that it's really not as bad as you thought it was.
And I know with us living in quarantine right now, people are isolated, and it's, of course, more prevalent because there's so much stress at home. How does somebody who is in a situation right now where, because there's a couple paths, because I know, and I know we've talked about this, by the time somebody's ready to get help, they're usually very isolated and they've let their friendships go. They've maybe ruined some of their friendships by crying wolf and not sticking to it. And how do they go at this time that we're in right now and get help? What do they do? What talk to that person who's at home, they're watching this, they're going, that's me, that's my situation, I've burned my bridges, no one cares about me anymore. They're feeling this horrible mental, perceptive, false reality that's been created in their mind. What does somebody like that do? How can they reach out and get help?
First of all, I want to say that, you're not alone. And secondly, your false thoughts are false, because the monster has isolated you intentionally. He's isolated you to believe that nobody cares and nobody's out there to help you. But there's family and friends that are very well aware of your situation, and you might have thought that you were hiding it. And those of us that are aware of domestic violence, we see the signs, we know the flags, and we've maybe tried to, start a conversation. And those that have tried, I would reach out to them first. Those that you trust, that are not friends with both you and the monster, that are just strictly your friends or your support group, reach out to those, because they know who you are. And I guarantee, if you say, hey, I know I've cried wolf before, and I know I've gone back, and it's broken your heart, but I really do need your help right now. I really need to figure this out, because I just can't take it anymore. And I guarantee that those people will willingly help you. And if you don't have a family member or a friend or even a coworker that you trust or feel that you can confide in, the best thing, when you're safe, when you're in a position to do so, is reach out to the hotline.org. There's a phone number, and I'll definitely put it in the comments, but it's 1-800-799-7233, and they can definitely help you create a safety plan of leaving. They're the experts. They're the ones who have done this for thousands, if not millions of people. And if you truly do want to leave, I know it's hard, but definitely make the commitment to yourself to do this as the final time.
What does somebody do that is on the outside that recognizes that a friend of theirs or maybe a child is being abused? Because child abuse is on the rise right now. And you guys, many of us have watched the Epstein documentary series where these kids didn't know at the time that what was happening to them was wrong. So it was when they got older that they recognized this. There is that point in our life when we're not sure if this is right or wrong. And if you have a suspicion, reach out and ask somebody, call a shelter, call Aaron. Aaron will be happy to take your call. Call me. Reach out to someone to say, hey, is this inappropriate behavior? Should this be happening in my home or in my marriage or in my relationship? Because oftentimes we aren't quite sure. But when you ask, you find out. But what do we do when we do recognize those cases where maybe there is a kid that's being abused, or your friend is being abused and maybe they're not ready to face it, or maybe they're afraid and they're
I would
trapped
definitely
in themselves?
I would definitely reach out, and I would ask them and say, hey, how are you doing? How is the whole, situation staying at home going? Is everything okay? And if they're like, yeah, it's fine, be like, so it's just fine. I would try to really push those questions, and I would do it in a gentle manner. And if they keep saying, yeah, it's fine, and they don't give you any details, I would then suggest asking them, so is your boyfriend or girlfriend home right now? Are you able to talk? Can I talk to you? Can I call you on the phone? Can we have a conversation? Because so much can be misconstrued during a text message and a text conversation that you don't get the body language, you don't hear the tones of the voice. And when you pick up the phone and you listen to them, you can hear the emotion in their voice. So you'd be able to tell like something's just not right. And if something in your gut when you're talking to them just doesn't sit right with you, then it probably isn't right. And if you're able to go over there and check, I would definitely do so. But if they do admit, I'm in a really bad situation, he hurt me last night, or this happened and he apologized and he said he would never do it again, then you can always get a hold of the police and have them do a wellness check if you feel that that's necessary. And I will advise that if you do that, be prepared for that person to get mad at you. Be prepared for the victim to not talk to you or answer your calls or be really upset, because it can cause turmoil. So you really need to be sure that one, they're in danger, and two, that they're probably going to pull away if they haven't given you the clear guidance on what's going on. So you have to be very, very careful when you talk to them. And I would say definitely talk to them first. Say, hey, would it be okay if I come by and check on you? If they say yes, great. And if they are kind of still hesitant, say, do I need to have a wellness check done on you? And you'll know, because I say it all the time, and I know you do too, Darla. If your gut's not feeling right and you just feel that icky feeling, there's something that's going on, and listen to that. So I'd call them on the phone, really listen to them.
And feel their energy when they talk.
Mm-hmm.
You can feel the energy. And is there anything you want to talk about or say and talk to people out there and give any tips of any sort before I transition and talk about how people can play a role in helping domestic violence?
Yes. So if you are being abused or you don't know if you're being abused, first of all, either reach out to Darla and I, and we can just talk to you, and we can just figure out what your relationship's like, and we can tell you, yes or no. And we know the signs, we know the flags, we understand that. However, if you are being abused, I really want you to know there's nothing to be ashamed of. You are not deserving of it. You do not need to settle for abuse. And that's really important to understand, because you've done nothing wrong. It has been the perpetrator, the monster's decision and choice to do that to you, a crime committed to you. These are all crimes, and you need to understand that it's a crime. It's not like, oh, he got drunk and I pissed him off because I said something wrong. No, it doesn't matter what you said. You never deserve to be hit, and this is a crime that's been committed to you, and it's not okay. So if you are in danger, please reach out to myself, Darla, or a friend that you trust that is not a mutual friend between you and the monster. And if you can't reach out to a friend, please either reach out to the police. You can also call animal control. You can go to a vet with your dog or cat and let them know. They will take care of it. They're mandatory reporters. There's different ways that you can get help, or call a shelter, or call the hotline. You can also go to the website. But if your devices are being monitored, if the people are following you around, you need to somehow come up with an excuse to either go to the doctor or go to a vet or have a friend come pick you up so you can get somewhere safe, and then you can take the necessary steps to get out of that situation by doing a restraining order and being safe and protected. So please, if you're being abused, understand it's a crime committed to you. You did not deserve it. And please, 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 I beg of you to reach out, because when this whole COVID thing does get lifted, I'm so deathly afraid. My heart breaks every day that I think about it, and all the news that happens where people are found dead because they were too shameful or too scared. So please reach out.
You gave me chills to my whole body, because I know that you've connected with somebody that needs this. I can feel it. For those of you that are not dealing with domestic violence, but you want to play a role, I want to share what Erin's mission is, because for me, it just lights a fire in my heart. It's just amazing. Erin wrote this book. It's called From Beaten to Badass. It's about her story and how she escaped from being beaten, raped, and abused. And it's a very powerful book. And she had a vision one day to get a book in every domestic violence shelter. And explain what your prompting was.
So I've struggled with many different things, all the elephants in the room, from being bullied and teased, abandoned, abused, raped, domestic violence, infertility. And I was feeling a little sorry for myself. And I had already done so much with my book by giving a portion back to those impacted by domestic violence and sexual assault. But I knew there had to be more. There had to be more to why I wrote this book. And I was like, it's great that people are reading my story, my friends, my families, the supporters, my fans, but I need those that are actually victims and survivors to read the story. I need them to understand that they're not alone. So there's got to be a way to get that book to them. And I was like, what if I had people buy the book for the shelters and it was sponsored in their name with a sticker and a letter to explain the cause? And that book was then sent to the shelters, where it was put on the shelves of those shelters, where the victims could say, hey, wait a minute, I've been beaten. I want to be a badass. Like, how do I become my own hero? This woman did it. Surely I can. And that's kind of where it all started. And it really inspired me, and it really solidified my why of why I needed to tell my story. Because I knew there had to be a reason that was bigger than just writing a check every month to shelters. And so that's how the Make an Impact in 2020 campaign started.
And how many shelters now have your book in their library?
So we are at 280 shelters with 285 books. We're almost at 10% of the country covered. We are in Colorado, fully sponsored. So every shelter in the following states has a copy. So Colorado, Nebraska, Iowa, New Jersey, and Hawaii. And then we also have Puerto Rico fully sponsored.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
awesome. What you can do if you would like, you can go to Erin's website, beatentobadass.com, and there's this purple button right in the middle of the page. And what does it say again? Make a difference or make an impact? Make a difference.
Sponsor now. Mm-hmm.
And when you click on that button, you can sponsor a book that comes from you and your name to a shelter of your choice. You can do it to the shelter in your town. I know for me, I did it to the shelter in the town that I grew up in because I have ties and connections there. And you can do your whole state. You can do as many as you want. And this is a way that you can make a difference. So for $25, this book goes on your behalf to the shelter with a letter, and it gets passed around, and the people in the shelter read it, and it gives them hope and purpose and helps them to feel that they're not alone. And of course, if you would like to buy this book yourself, you can also get it right from Erin's website at Beaten to Badass. And can I give a little secret about your next book?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm so excited because Erin started on her next book. And can I tell the name of it? Or is it a secret?
It's a secret.
Oh,
No,
gosh.
no.
Okay, well, the name of it is really amazing. It's so perfect. So, anyway, become one of Erin's fans because she's on a mission to help make a difference in domestic violence. And we can all play a role, being when a large group of people come together with a cause to stand behind a mission and a cause to help others. It's powerful. Erin, thank you so much. Anything else you want to say to anyone out there?
No, thank you for watching. Thank you for the love, the support, sharing. This message needs to be heard around the world. And even if you don't think it needs to be heard by somebody, it probably does. There's probably something in this message that they can relate to. They say 1 in 3 people are victims of domestic violence, and that's women, and then 1 in 6 in men. And I do know that it's actually a lot higher. I was standing in a room with 2 of my clients one day, and we brought up domestic violence, and I said, me, and then another one raised their hand, and then the other one raised their hand, and that was 3 out of 3. And so there's somebody that's impacted. So just because everybody seems happy and go lucky, don't think for a minute that they might not be impacted. So Thank you so much, Darla, for having this important conversation. I know it's hard for people to hear and listen to, but we need to start the conversation.
Yep. Thank you, Erin. And thank you, everyone. Please share this and just put hashtag domestic violence, hashtag beaten to badass. And that way it'll tie it all together, and you don't know who's on your Facebook that is looking and searching and praying for a way to get help. Thanks, everyone. Bye, Erin.
Bye.